Hello, hello, hello everyone. My name is John Sierra and I am a Tolkien scholar, which means that I basically live and breathe Tolkien's legendarium, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, The Children of Hurin, Beren and Luthien, The Fall of Gondolin, The Fall of Numenor, The History of Middle-earth, The Nature of Middle-earth, the History of The Hobbit, all of it really. And his other works too, his poetic works, his short stories, his translations like the Fall of Arthur, which is not finished, or The Green Knight, really good one there, Beowulf, of course. And I'm the guy that generally people have been coming to with all sorts of questions about Tolkien and his legendarium and his works and himself. So I'm here to answer your questions. If you have a question about anything related to Tolkien, whether it's The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, The Silmarillion, whatever, you can do it. Really, there's two easy ways to do it. One is to just ask in the comments. I try my very best to answer as many of the comments as I can, especially if they contain questions. If you want to be featured in a video, or if you just feel that it's just too complex and you want a longer, more detailed answer, go to Quora. There is a link to my Quora in the description. And it's very easy to make an account there. You might even already have one. You could sign up with Facebook. You could sign up with Google, all sorts of things there. And just tag me in it. You can actually just go to my account through the link and click Ask Question. Or if you ask anything on Quora related to Tolkien, it's going to give you a list of people that, they suggest that you tag. And I'm going to be at or near the top of the list there. Just look for my name. I have short hair in the picture, but it was an old picture. It's me and my dog, so it was a long time ago. So anyway, yeah. The channel, let's just go over that real quick. We're at 1,202 subscribers as of this recording right this moment, which is absolutely fantastic. It feels like we got 1,000 just a little while ago, and we're already at 1,200. The goal right now, the goal that we've set is 10,000. I haven't decided exactly what we're going to do. I will make a special video at some point to announce what we're going to do for 10,000 subscribers, because I think that's got to be something very special. But we have 13 questions to get through today. Not as many as I have been featuring in videos recently, but sometimes the recording can get kind of long, and I've forced myself to be a little bit more selective about questions and try not to pick every question I like, because a lot of you guys ask some really, really good questions. So I've tried to be more selective. We're going to do a reading for you, of course. I don't know specifically what I'm going to read. I just grabbed the Silmarillion because I figured there's a lot of different things there. I just opened to a little bit of Beren and Luthien. I feel like I just read this part. Here, let me go to a different part. I feel like I just read that part. Okay, of Maeglin. Okay, let's read a little bit about Maeglin. Where should we start? Let's just start on a random paragraph and read for a while. Then Eöl mounted his horse, saying, "It is good, Lord Curufin, to find a kinsman thus kindly at need. I will remember it when I return." Then Curufin looked darkly upon Eöl. "Do not flaunt the title of your wife before me," he said. "For those who steal the daughters of the Noldor and wed them without gift or leave do not gain kinship with their kin. I have given you leave to go. Take it and be gone. By the laws of the Eldar, I may not slay you at this time. And this counsel I add, return now to your dwelling in the darkness of Nan Elmoth. For my heart warns me that if you now pursue those who love you no more, never will you return thither." Then Eöl rode off in haste, and he was filled with hatred of all the Noldor, for he perceived now that Maeglin and Arathel were fleeing to Gondolin. And driven by anger and the shame of his humiliation, he crossed the fords of Aros, and rode hard upon the way that they had gone before. But though they knew not that he followed them, and he had the swiftest steed, he came never in sight of them until they reached the Berthianach, and abandoned their horses. Then by ill fate they were betrayed, for the horses neighed loudly, and Eöl's steed heard them, and sped towards them, and Eöl saw from before the white raiment of Arathel, and marked which way she went, seeking the secret path into the mountains. Now Arathel and Maeglin came to the outer gate of Gondolin and the dark guard under the mountains, and there she was received with joy. And passing through the 7 gates, she came with Maeglin to Turgon upon Amon Gwareth. Then the king listened with wonder to all that Eregion had to tell. And he looked with liking upon Maeglin his sister's son, seeing in him one worthy to be accounted among the princes of the Noldor. I rejoice indeed that Fëanor has returned to Gondolin, he said. And now more fair again shall my city seem than in the days when I deemed her lost, and Maeglin shall have the highest honour in my realm. Then Maeglin bowed low and took Turgon for lord and king, to do all his will. But thereafter he stood silent and watchful, for the bliss and splendour of Gondolin surpassed all that he had imagined from the tales of his mother. And he was amazed by the strength of the city and the hosts of its people, and the many things strange and beautiful that he beheld. Yet to none were his eyes more often drawn than to Idril, the king's daughter, who sat beside him. For she was golden as the Vanyar, her mother's kindred, and she seemed to him as the sun from which all the king's hall drew its light. Trying to turn the page a little bit more. But Eöl, following after Eregion, found the dry river and the secret path, and so creeping in by stealth he came to the guard, and was taken and questioned. When the guard heard that he claimed Eregion as wife, they were amazed, and sent a swift messenger to the city. And he came to the king's hall. Lord, he cried, the guard have taken captive one that came by stealth to the dark gate. Eöl he names himself, and he is a tall elf, dark and grim, of the kindred of the Sindar, yet he claims the Lady Eregion as his wife, and demands to be brought before you. His wrath is great that he is hard to restrain, but we have not slain him as your law commands. Then Eregion said, Alas, Eöl has followed us even as I feared, but with great stealth was it done, for we saw and heard no pursuit as we entered upon the hidden way. Then she said to the messenger, He speaks but the truth. He is Eöl, and I am his wife, and he is the father of my son. Slay him not, but lead him hither to the king's judgment, if the king so wills. And so it was done, and Eöl was brought to Turgon's hall, and stood before his high seat, proud and sullen. Though he was amazed no less that his son at all that he knew, his heart was filled with anger, and with hate of the Noldor. But Turgon treated him with honour, and rose up and would take his hand, and said, Welcome, kinsman, for so I hold you. Here you shall dwell at your pleasure, save only that you must abide and depart not from my kingdom, for it is my law that none who find the way hither shall depart. But Eöl withdrew his hand. I acknowledge not your law, he said. No right have you or any of your kin in this land to seize realms or to set bounds, either here nor there. This is the land of the Teleri, to which you bring war and all unquiet, dealing ever proudly and unjustly. I care nothing for your secrets, and I care not to spy upon you, but to claim my own, my wife and my son. Yet if in Eregion your sister you have come claim, then let her remain. Let the bird go back to the cage, where soon she will sicken again, as she sickened before. But not so Maeglin. My son you shall not withhold from me. Come, Maeglin, son of Eöl, your father commands you. Leave the house of his enemies, the slayer of his kin, or be accursed. But Maeglin answered nothing. Then Turgon sat in his high seat, holding his staff of doom, and in a stern voice spoke, I will not debate with you, dark elf. By the swords of the Noldor alone are your sunless woods defended. Your freedom to wander there wild you owe to my kin. And but for them, long since you would have labored in thraldom in the pits of Angband, and here I am king, and whether you will it or will it not, my doom is law. The choice only is given to you to abide here or to die here, and so also for your son. So this is part of the fall of Gondolin. Now it's interesting that we go back to the first conversation where Curufin was very, very harsh to Eöl and basically telling him, get out of here, you're not one of us. We don't consider you to be a friend of the Noldor. I won't kill you, but I'd really like to. And the issue here is that Eöl is called the Dark Elf. He is not a Dark Elf, he is the Dark Elf. And he is not called dark because he's evil. He's called dark because he hates light and sunlight, and he prefers the nighttime. Now, a lot of elves actually prefer the night because a lot of elves were born under the stars, or they awakened under the stars in the darkness of Middle-earth before there was even a sun. And they weren't around for the Spring of Arda when there were the two lamps that lit up Middle-earth, so they were born in the darkness. But you see that characters that have a distaste for light tend to be the most evil characters in the Legendarium. Gollum and Sauron Morgoth. Morgoth had a complicated relationship with light, though. He was attracted to light, but he also hated it and despised it at the same time. Eöl and Maglin are really interesting because Eöl took the king's sister basically as his wife by deception. He trapped her and basically forced her to marry him, and through this was born a son, Maglin. Now, Maglin here is treated very well, but he's already leering at the king's daughter. Turgon is so magnanimous. He's such a good king, and he made his mistakes along the way as well. But he is very welcome to have his sister back. He's welcome to have a nephew here, and even Eöl he greets with open arms and a handshake. And Eöl is nothing but rude to the king here, and so I'm not going to get into what happens afterwards, but you can see how Maglin himself, as the product of what we might consider to be a loveless marriage, or a marriage out of deception and deceit and entrapment, is leering at the king's daughter. Now she has eyes only for Tur, and they will have a son named Earendil, and Earendil will have a son named Elrond, and these are all very, very important characters. But in this case, we're seeing the product of a loveless marriage. Like, Tur and Idril loved each other, and that's where Earendil came from. Arethel does not really love Eöl. Eöl does not really love Arethel. He merely wishes to possess her. And even so, he said, she's gone back to her cage and she will wither. He doesn't really want her back. He only wants his son back, which is interesting. And his son doesn't want to go back, not out of love of Gondolin or out of thankfulness to Turgon, but because he's leering at the king's daughter, who is his cousin. And the elves don't marry cousins, not first cousins at least. And that creates a whole issue. Morgoth becomes involved, But anyway, I've talked about this long enough. Let's get to your questions, starting with the first one. So, this first question comes in from the Oski Boski, who asks, was it Manwë's order to bring back Frodo and Sam by the Eagles after they destroyed the One Ring? In a roundabout way, yes. Manwë did not tell Gwaihir to specifically rescue Frodo, but he likely gave him a directive to be at the disposal of Gandalf the White in this specific situation. If we look at all the previous times that Gwaihir helped out, it was always a favor, and usually a grudging one. In The Hobbit, he had the Eagles bear Gandalf, the Dwarves, and Bilbo away, but he would not have them go as far as Erebor or anywhere near Mirkwood. This was explicitly mentioned to be in return for Gandalf healing him in the past. His appearance in Orthanc was a favor to Radagast, and he grumbled about carrying Gandalf, and he would not bear him far. He refused to bring him to Rivendell or to Lothlorien, but Gandalf was happy to be dropped off in Rohan, which was very close by. His appearance at Zirakzigil was a favor to Gandalf. I'm sorry, not Gandalf, Galadriel, which he noted that he really didn't relish carrying Gandalf again, but he found them lighter than usual. Lastly, he appears at the Black Gate with his brothers. Here, Gandalf practically begs him to bear him into Mordor to rescue Frodo and Sam. And Gwaihir says, I will bear you whither you may go, even if you were made out of stone. This is a stark contrast to basically saying, you're too heavy and I'm not uber. This change of attitude, in my opinion, can only come if Manwë directed him to listen to Gandalf and to do whatever Gandalf asked in this situation. So in a roundabout way, yes, Gandalf did indeed make sure that Frodo and Sam were rescued. Next question. Okay, here's one that comes in from Matt Wren, who asks, how was it that Fingolfin was able to tap into some kind of berserker-style rage before riding into Angband and challenging Morgoth? Was there something all great elves were able to achieve if in desperate need? So other people did put their voices into this question, and I'm going to say that what they said was very correct. Partly that it was because Fingolfin was just that powerful. But there's a little more to it than that. Fingolfin was the mightiest elf after Fëanor fell into evil. Evil always diminishes you, and the Valar said that the worst of Melkor's evil deeds was the marring of Fëanor, who was supposed to be the greatest elf of all time. He was just that powerful, as all of the line of Finwë were. But the Silmarillion makes a point to state that there was more going on. In his wrath, his eyes shone like the Valar, and those that saw him riding in his full glory did not think of him as an elf. They thought he was Orome. Now you might question, who thought this? Not elves. Who would recognize their High King? They would know that's not Orome. Who was reporting this? Who wrote this? Orcs? Trolls? Sauron? No. Surely their descriptions of Fingolfin, absolutely radiating power, did not make it into Elvish lore. But who was nearby? Who bore his body away after Morgoth killed him? Thorondor was nearby. Though Fingolfin was under the doom of Mandos, like all the other exiles, he took part in no kinslayings, and Manwë was hardly the level of a hard nose, we'll say, that Namo was. His eagles, the Maiar spirits themselves, according to Tolkien's final revision in the book The Nature of Middle-earth, were watching him as he went off to fight the devil. Fingolfin was blessed, to put it simply. Okay, next question. In The Lord of the Rings, what would Sauron's afterlife be like after the One Ring is destroyed and he essentially goes to hell, or worse, for his crimes? Well, he doesn't actually die. He was never really alive in that sense. Sauron isn't killed when the One Ring is destroyed. He is just made so weak that he can never return. His body did die. And it wasn't the first time that this happened. He had a body die after the battle with Elendil and Gil-galad, and he had another battle die earlier than that during the Akallabeth. He was able to reform new ones, but with the One Ring destroyed, the greater part of his power was broken, and he was too weak to do so. Sauron is an angel, albeit a fallen one, and as such he cannot die or ever really be destroyed unless by the will of his creator, Ilúvatar. All of the Ainur, that's the angels, that came into the world upon its creation are bound to it, and they cannot leave. The sole exception was Melkor, who was thrust from the world, but he could not be fully destroyed without the world also being destroyed, because so much of his power was tied up in the world itself. Sauron was brought low, and he would not pass from the world or meet his creator again until the world ends. Now, at this point, Tolkien would tell you that his fate was between him and God, and wholly dependent on whether or not he repented or not. The same is true for all of the Ainur who were slain bodily and forced to live as shadows or shades of themselves, Saruman, the Balrogs, and such. They would all have the opportunity to repent. Would they? That's between them and their creator, really. Tolkien's comment on it was that he can't imagine them repenting, but he has faith that they might. Okay, next question. Here's a question that came in from Don Perkins, who asks, in Elrond's council about the One Ring, were any Rohirrim summoned? Nobody was summoned, actually. All of the people that were there at the Council of Elrond were just already there in Rivendell at the time, and they all came for different reasons. Nobody came there specifically to attend a council. Out of all the outsiders, as in the people who don't actually live in Rivendell, so let's look at them, the following. We have Frodo and Bilbo. Now, Frodo had recently arrived, and he was the ring bearer, and Bilbo had lived at Rivendell for a while now. I'm including him because he's not originally from Rivendell. He's been there for 16 years, and he was invited to the council specifically because he was the ring bearer. ring finder. Sam. Sam was not invited. He snuck in. Gloin and Gimli. These dwarves were already in Rivendell because they were there visiting Bilbo and telling him that Sauron was looking for him, and they also wanted to talk to Elrond. Legolas, he had arrived on an errand from his father, King Thranduil, to inform Elrond that Gollum had escaped. Gandalf, he was supposed to be accompanying Frodo. It was by the machinations of Saruman that he did not, and he arrived in Rivendell shortly before Frodo. Galdor, he was sent to Rivendell by Círdan on an unspecified errand. Aragorn. Now, technically, he lives there. It's his home. He hasn't been there in, like, a while, but technically he lives there. Elrond is his foster father. Arwen doesn't really live there, but she also wasn't at the council. She actually lives with her grandparents in Lothlorien, but she wasn't at the council, so I just mentioning that. And then we have Boromir. Now, he arrived due to a prophetic dream that both he and his brother Faramir had. He was summoned, but he was not summoned by Elrond. He was summoned by the Valar. The only talk of summoning people to the council was that Elrond mused that perhaps he should have invited Bombadil, but Gandalf simply states that that would have been useless. Bombadil refuses to step outside of the boundary that he has made for himself. It is largely coincidental or eucatastrophic that so many nations were represented in this council, but no one was sent to Rohan to summon anybody. And even if they did, it would have been Grima Wormtongue that received the missive, and he would have told Saruman about it. So even if Elrond had the idea to send someone to Rohan, which would have created a time issue, Gandalf would have told him that's a non-starter of an idea. Okay, next question. So the next three questions are all about dwarves, and I sort of clustered them together because of that. So we're starting with one that came in from Harry Pringle, who asks, did Thorin know about the One Ring? If so, did he care, or was he too focused on reclaiming Erebor and finding the Arkenstone? He knew about the ring, but he didn't know its significance. Though Bilbo initially kept the ring secret, he revealed it to the dwarves in Mirkwood after Thorin had been captured, and while he was sneaking around in Thranduil's place, he did tell Thorin specifically about the ring. Thorin was very amused by it, and he thought it was very useful for Bilbo to have such a thing. However, at that point, no one knew that it was the One Ring, that it was Sauron's ring. Not Bilbo, not even Gandalf, and certainly not Thorin. Thorin died before the ring was identified, and by that time, Bilbo didn't even have it anymore. Frodo had it. Okay, next dwarf question. So this question and the next one both sort of comprise the thumbnail question. They're both related to it. And sort of the thumbnail question is sort of a coalescence of these two. So this one comes in from Andy Plowman, who asks, after the destruction of the Balrog and the fall of Sauron, did the dwarves consider going back to Moria as the orc population was severely reduced? Not only did they consider it, they did it. Though the genealogy varies, the finalized version of the line of Durin can be found in the book The Peoples of Middle-earth, where Tolkien revised the one that was seen in The Lord of the Rings, clarifying that Durin the Seventh, the Last, was the son of Thorin III Stonehelm, who himself was the son of Dain the Second Ironfoot, who was slain in The Lord of the Rings. Durin the Seventh, the Last, was not content to merely be king under the mountain, and in a note made by the author, states that he did indeed reestablish the kingdom of Khazad-dûm, also known as Moria, and I'm going to talk about that even more in this next question. So this one also came in from Harry Pringle, and it's related to the previous question. Why did Thorin III refuse to help reclaiming Moria? Who said he refused anything? Thorin III Stonehelm did a lot of things, actually, but during his reign, no one was trying to retake Moria that he would help. Thorin III Stonehelm became king under the mountain during the War of the Ring, when his father Dain the Second Ironfoot was slain. Though it was his son, Durin the Seventh, the Last, who reclaimed Moria later on, and as I mentioned, yes, The dotted line in the genealogy in The Lord of the Rings would suggest that Durin was a descendant of Thorin III. Not directly his son, but the revised version in the Peoples of Middle-earth has a straight line indicating that Thorin III is Durin II's son, and the dotted line is afterwards, going into nothing, just suggesting that his line will continue even if Durin the Deathless does not reincarnate into his own line again. Thorin III had a great reign, and the same source, the Peoples of Middle-earth, told us that Moria was reclaimed by Durin VII. But Thorin Stonehelm, he did a lot of great things too. He rebuilt Erebor and Dale with his friend King Bard II. Bard II's father was Brand, King Brand, who was the king of Dale during The Lord of the Rings, but he was also killed during The Lord of the Rings. And through his noble, Gimli, he established a new dwarven colony in Rohan and became a very good friend and ally of Aragorn II Elisar, and of course the elves of the Forest of the Green Leaves. Though he did not fully retake Moria during his time, he did start the process by mining for mithril. He sent dwarves into Moria, and he started the process of reopening the mine. Not the kingdom, but the mine. He was more concerned himself with restoring Erebor to its full glory and building up alliances and friendships, so when his son took over after his death, that was the time to reclaim Khazad-dûm. Okay, next question. So here's a question from Blair Colquhoun, who asks, in the past has asked me many linguistic questions because Blair is an aspiring writer and likes to name things in Elvish and comes to me with translation questions. And in this case, she asks, would J.R.R. Tolkien have used Andityrgwyn, Flame of the White Land, as a name for one of his swords in The Lord of the Rings? No. He would not use Andityrgwyn, meaning Flame of the White Land, as a name of a sword, because that doesn't translate that way, and it's a mishmash of two different languages. Anduril is said by Aragorn to mean Flame of the West, but it is a poetic translation, not a transliteration. And does not mean flame. The flame part comes from Ril, Anduril. Ril is the flame part, because Ril means brilliance, especially the brilliance of a sunset. And refers to Andorre, which is a name for Numenor, which is a land that was in the west. So it literally means gift, as Andorre was the land of gift. But in this case, he was being poetic. Flame of the White Land would be something more like Fëanor, from Fana, which means white, Nor, meaning land, and Ril, meaning brilliance or flame of a sunset. That's Quenya, which is the language that Aragorn was using, even though he spoke fluent Sindarin. Your translation there, And is, you get that Tyrgwyn, this very, very Sindarin, very Celtic sounding. It's a mishmash of two different languages. Of course, if you're writing a story, you can name a sword anything you want. But the question here was, would Tolkien have used that? No, if he wanted a sword that was Flame of the White Land, it would probably be Fëanor. We had a discussion about this in the past that was about a sword called Flame of the North, and I came up with a translation, but I said that it doesn't make sense for it to be flame in this sense. So I actually gave her the name of a sword that could be Storm of the North. But anyway, that was quite a while ago, and I don't remember the name that I gave it, unfortunately. Anyway, let's get on to the next question. Here's a question that came in by the request of Michael Brad, who asks, in The Lord of the Rings, what would happen if Gandalf brought Saruman to Bilbo Baggins' birthday party and introduced him to Bilbo and invited Saruman to perform magic tricks like Gandalf did? Well, Saruman would have basically told him to get lost in that situation. Saruman's interest in the hobbits began and ended with pipeweed. He first saw Gandalf smoking pipeweed at a White Council meeting, and afterwards he pulled him aside and he asked him, could you not play around with your silly inventions when we're having a meeting and talking about important things. And Gandalf told him that he didn't invent pipeweed. It was a weed that came from Numenor, and the hobbits who lived in the Shire figured out that you can smoke it, and that it was wonderful, and he liked it, and it helped him clear his mind and order his thoughts. So Saruman scoffed at this, but he personally checked it out for himself, secretly. He took several trips into the Shire, and he started an underground pipeweed trade, which is why there was barrels of the stuff in Isengard. It's also why Gandalf's reputation worsened, and his reputation had suffered in the Shire, and it was because of Saruman. Because Saruman came in disguise, and the hobbits thought that he was Gandalf, and he was up to some mischief. Saruman did not actually like hobbits. He only saw them as a way to get his secret vice, because he did keep it a secret. He thought it was a shameful thing to be smoking, and he scoffed at Gandalf for doing it openly. But he did it himself. He was a huge hypocrite. He would not be attending birthday parties and doing magic tricks. This is the sort of thing that Gandalf did. And Gandalf did it because he was Bilbo's friend. Saruman was not Bilbo's friend. He was not friends with anybody in the Shire, and he would see that as a huge waste of time. Okay, next question. Okay, this question comes in by the request of Hesham, hope I'm saying it right, who asks, what would happen if someone in Middle-earth claimed the One Ring and was able to use its power for good without being corrupted? Who can resist its corruption? Only a being that is greater than or equal to Sauron could master the One Ring, and it could not be used for good. Gandalf explained it beautifully, both in Bag End and again in Rivendell. Hobbits, men, elves, dwarves, they could not really use the ring for its intended purposes. Galadriel explained it again. To use the ring would require Frodo to become much stronger and to train his mind in the domination of others. And this is the power of the ring, dominating minds. I can't fathom how that power could be used for good. And I'm gonna talk about one of the comments I got in a moment, but let me finish what I'm saying. Gandalf stated that he would be sorely tempted to use the ring, and while his intentions would be good, he cannot actually do good with it. He would just become like Sauron. The only beings that could use the ring and not be corrupted by it would be those that are greater than Sauron, the Valar, Iluvatar, and they have no need of the ring. Now, I got a question when I said that I can't fathom how you could use the ring for good. And somebody commented here. I'm trying to find this comment. There's a lot of comments on this one. Oh, so Frank here made a comment that he said that he sees a simple way to use it for good by using it's a very long comment, I'm only going to read a little bit of it, by using its influence to dominate convicted criminals to not do whatever their crime was. And the thing is, you're erasing free will in this instance, because if somebody is not committing crimes, that doesn't mean that they're a good person. It just means they're not committing crimes, and they're not doing it. They're not making a choice. You have to make a choice to be good. It's very easy to be evil. It's very difficult to be good, and it's a conscious choice. When you take away free will, there really isn't good and evil anymore. You're just a puppet. So you're not making people better. You're just making them slaves, essentially. And Tolkien was very clear in one moral that he instilled in all of his works, especially The Lord of the Rings. Well, actually, really, I should say especially the Silmarillion, because the Silmarillion is a cautionary tale about this, is that you cannot do good things through evil deeds. It's just impossible. If you do evil deeds, whether it's Fëanor or Saruman or even Sauron himself, in what you think is a noble ideal, then you're still doing evil. You're not making the world better, you're making it worse. The only character that really knows that he's evil and is consciously trying to be evil is Melkor, or Morgoth as he became later called. Sauron thinks he's the hero, Saruman thinks he's the hero, Fëanor thinks he's the hero, and they're all doing terrible, terrible things, but they think that they're doing good. And Tolkien was very against the idea of doing a bad thing for the greater good. Anyway, next question. Here's another question from Michael Brett, who asks, what would happen if Denethor tried to arrest or detain Gandalf because he supported Aragorn? Denethor. Oh, I like this subject. I really do. Denethor is smart enough not to try something silly like that. Denethor doesn't like Gandalf. He thinks that the wizard is plotting on installing Aragorn, who he knew ages ago as Thorongil, as a puppet king, who the wizard could control. Now, aside from this theory that he had, he also just did not like the fact that his son Faramir was Gandalf's student. And especially after losing his older son Boromir, he was upset that the rest of the steward, the next steward would be a wizard's pupil, as he says, and that even if Gandalf did not manage to install Aragorn as king, he would control Gondor through Faramir. That's not to say that Denethor is not aware that Gandalf is one of the most well-known and beloved figures in Middle-earth, and that arresting him or detaining him in any way, or I should say attempting to detain him in any way, would be a really bad political move. Denethor was wise. He may have been wrong about Gandalf, but he was wise, and he knew that trying to solidify his power in that sort of way would not be accepted by the people of Gondor. It's the reason that he never just declared himself king. Boromir once asked him, hasn't enough time passed? Can't you just call yourself the king? And Denethor said that to the people of Gondor, it would never be enough time. Gandalf does not answer to Denethor or anybody in Middle-earth other than Saruman, and although by the end of the story, he's Saruman. He's Saruman as he should have been. He has ascended to that position as the White. He is a servant of the secret fire, that's God, and an agent of the Valar, that's the angels. And he is an angel. The Valar are just the bigger angels. Faramir actually knew this. He even knew Gandalf's real name and where he came from. And Denethor was both wise enough and sneaky enough to come by this information himself. Trying to arrest an angel would be like tugging on Superman's cape. Okay, next question. The following question came in by the request of Blitz, who asks, why was Sauron permitted into Eregion if Galadriel did not trust him? She and Celeborn were the lady and lord of this region, and yet Sauron gained admittance, unlike in Lorien, and a few centuries later he inspired the Gwaithir Myrdain to revolt. So Galadriel and Celeborn were not the leaders of Eregion. Celebrimbor was the lord there. Gil-galad in far-off Lindon was their king. Tolkien wrote many different variants of the origins of Galadriel and Celeborn, many of which are found in the book Unfinished Tales. In one of them, he mentions that when Sauron was in Eregion, that Galadriel mistrusted him. In all of the other versions of this tale, she is not in Eregion at all, but she's in Lothlorien, where she is the lady, and Celeborn is the lord. Whether or not she was present in the canon version is up in the air. I don't think she was. Though Celebrimbor visited her afterwards and gave her the ring Nenya, the fact is that she's not in charge. Eregion was a Noldor settlement, and thus the High King was in charge. Eregion Gil-galad was the High King. He's in charge. He's not there, though. So the Lord of the region, and its founder was Celebrimbor, who created the Noldor community to be in friendship with the Dwarves. It's not even in the same region as Lothlorien because they're on opposite sides of the Misty Mountains. Galadriel didn't hold political sway there, even if she was Finarfin's daughter. The reason that I say that she was not present is not merely because she was only present in one of many versions, but because Celebrimbor would have listened to her if she didn't trust Anatar, who turned out to be Sauron. He was madly in love with her, and he held her wisdom in the highest regard. This is why I believe the version in which he travels to Lothlorien after the One is forged and gives her the ring Nenya is the canon variant of the story. Okay, next question. And our final question came in by the request of Banazir, who asks, Fëanor's oath includes the line, Our word hear thou, Eru Allfather, to the everlasting darkness doomest if our deed faileth. Would this actually have happened, especially given what happened to the Dunharrow people? I guess this depends on what your opinion of what everlasting darkness means. The oath is powerful, and Iluvatar holds all people who make such oaths to their words. They cannot take his name in vain, after all. This does not mean that Fëanor can command Iluvatar to take any specific action if he failed. Contrast the wording of the oath to the Doom of Mandos, which uses phrases such as tears unnumbered, and to evil end shall all things turn that they begin well, which by the way goes into what I was talking about earlier, about how you cannot do good by evil deeds. And of course, there long shall ye abide and yearn for your bodies, and find little pity, though all whom ye have slain shall entreat you for you. This last one is the most chilling part of the Doom of Mandos. They're told that if they do not repent, they will die, they will come to Mandos, and they will be stuck there. And even as the people that they murdered beg for them to be given mercy, they will not find mercy. So, of course, Namo was not addressing Fëanor and his sons who took the oath only. He was addressing all of the elves that followed, even those that rebelled without violence, such as Galadriel and Fingolfin. Some, like Finarfin, turned right around and they went home and they found forgiveness. Others persisted. The oath, though, was more powerful than the Doom of Mandos because it was to Iluvatar, it was to Eru Allfather. Allfather is the transliteration of Iluvatar, by the way. Fëanor and his sons could not repent even if they wanted to, because their oath was made to a higher authority than the Valar. And the one, Eru, and that the one is a transliteration of Eru, by the way, would hold them to their oath to show them the consequences of their actions. I think this counts to me as everlasting darkness, considering their eventual fates. Now, Banazir actually commented on this and said that he thinks this makes a lot more sense than the interpretation given in the wiki, the Tolkien Gateway, which is the better wiki of the two major wikis, by the way, which says that Everlasting Dark is another name for the void where Morgoth ends up, and that was the first thing that Banazir thought of, but that would seem like a pretty extreme punishment, no matter how bad the kinslings were. And my reply to this is that may have actually been what Fëanor was talking about, but he's not the one in charge. He can't command God to throw him into the void if he fails. It just doesn't work like that. I think the punishment that he got was worse in a lot of ways, you know. Yeah. So that was the last question. So I really enjoyed doing this episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. And if you have gotten all the way through this, you must have enjoyed it. So please, if you haven't subscribed already, please click that subscribe button. Click the bell and turn on notifications. Consider membership. If you want to join as a member, you will see all of the videos at least a week early, sometimes more, but at least a week early, and you will get special emotes and such, and your comments will be highlighted. You get what they say, the members privilege. It is very, very cheap, and it really helps support me. So there is a link to membership in the description as well. Some people have said that the join button doesn't always work, so that's why there's a link in the description. And I say thank you to all of the people who have been members. Thank you to all the people that let the ads play. I know sometimes there's a lot of them. I don't always control exactly how many there are. And thank you to all the people who have YouTube Premium that watch, because you're really helping support the channel. I will see you guys next time.